Economist Wolfram Schrettl joins us now. Good to have you along. First of all, tell us how bad the situation is right now for Russia and Russian companies.
So far, it hasn't fully made itself felt what was done in terms of sanctions, but the Russian economy already for quite some time is in dire straits. Whether or not this is already the recession is open to discussion. But the investment activity is already nosediving for quite a while.
And these sanctions, are they going to continue that trend, do you think?
I'm quite convinced.
So they're tough enough?
By all standards that we know, they will inflict a lot of harm on the Russian economy.
A lot of harm on the Russian economy without hurting the West, or how do you see it?
It may partly hurt the West as well. There's no way around this, but the effect will be hugely disproportionate if inflicting strong harm on the Russian economy and little on Western economies, except individual companies, they may get harmed.
And this is despite the fact that conventional oil fields and gas are not covered, the all-important gas sector. The wording is also very loose. I mean, it comes down to how national authorities really interpret these sanctions and then implement them.
Well, I think they will clarify things once they have the legal material out of Brussels and other places. They will come to an agreement. I think the sanctions, as far as oil and gas is concerned, are not so important. The truly important sanctions, as has been said quite a number of times already, are the financial ones. Russia is a hugely indebted economy. They have currency reserves, but they have much more in terms of debt. And denying them access to the financial markets means they cannot renew their debt. They will have to dig into their currency reserves to repay debt falling due, and that will inflict huge harm.
Tell me, is this also about sending a signal to companies about the political correctness of doing business in Russia?
Well, I mean, the business of business is business, so no one can blame them for having entered Russia. But entering Russia and then pretending it's Switzerland is a bit naive. I would say whoever is busy in Russia should know what he's dealing with. And expropriations, one way or another, may be one kind of problem. There are other problems, corruption, etc. They all know what they are dealing with.
But what's going to win in the end? Principle or profit?
Well, that's a hard question. Profit is usually the long-run winner.
Sure.
But in this particular context, we have become principled. This is about values. We are dealing with values. And here we have gotten an answer. The Western politicians have been raving about common values, and the Russians are now quite explicitly telling us, go to hell with your values, we have our own values, you want to impose your values on us. We have our own values. In effect, they're saying we have our own civilization, and you keep yours, we keep ours.
And at the same time, they can go elsewhere. They can go to China.
They can go to China, but the Chinese need to be treated with caution from a Russian point of view. The Russians are worried that the Chinese may try to occupy the east of Russia, invade parts of Siberia in a way not quite dissimilar to what Russia is doing in eastern Ukraine. So the friendship there is not a very deep one, I would say.
Can you compare these sanctions to the international sanctions against Iran, for example?
Not really. I would say Iran is limited in its exports of oil and gas and a few other things, but that's about it. I would say there's a long way to go before we reach the type of sanctions that are inflicted on Iran.
And in the meantime, you said businesses are going to be hurt. Are we also talking small businesses? I mean, when you take a look at the overall economy of Germany, for example, and big companies, I suppose they can shoulder something like this, but the little companies?
Well, the overall economy will not be harmed at all, almost not be harmed at all. Little companies, for them, it can be a problem if they have oriented themselves largely towards Russia, then of course they are in deep trouble.
So your advice to them, briefly?
My advice to them is they should have taken precautions, always be prepared for the worst. And now that case may happen, so they should be able to deal with it. If they cannot, it's their problem.
Mr. Schrettl, thank you very much.